Devon, what's your line?
Feel the rhythm. Feel the rhyme. Get on up. It's bobsled time.
Yes! 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 Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mentor Project's Optimizing Your Success show. We are so excited. It is Winter Olympics time. We did not need to go far for this week's special hot seat guest because each and every week we have our own Winter Olympian, the one and only, the original Jamaican bobsledder seen in the movie Cool Runnings, Mr. Devon Harris.
Indeed. Well, I'm on the hot seat and I'm from the team that is considered the hottest thing on ice. So,
ooh, nice. Now, I have once again, we have the greatest panel of high achievers in the world, starting with our own, the CEO of the Mentor Project. She has now given up the reins of the behind the scenes stuff, and she will be joining us each and every week. Our very own, the co-founder and CEO of the Mentor Project, Dr. Debbie Heiser. Hello.
Yay. Thanks
And
for
our own number one change maker in the world. And she's one of our mentors, the one and only Janice Lintz. And Suzie, Katz, the award-winning photographer and founder of Photo Wings. And I don't know what happened to Bruce Wiley, who was here a second ago. There he is. He is back. He needed to make his entrance. The guy with the best background screens ever. Writer, journalist, professor, systems modeler, computational digital health expert, Dr. Bruce Wiley. Hello. And everyone needs to guess. He has a photo of the original Jamaican bobsledders behind him. Everyone, when you tell us, if you're watching live, tell us where you are coming in from. And then let us know if you know which one is our own Devon Harris in that picture there right behind Bruce. Devon, hello.
Well, I was supposed to say it's good to be here. It's always good to be here.
And it's so good to have you here. I am excited that we're getting to chat because we first chatted when I interviewed you for my book, The Success Factor.
You mean this one here?
Awesome. Excellent. And you had this most incredible story. The most incredible story of somebody who grew up on a tropical island and now he made it to the Olympics, to the Winter Olympics. So we really want to hear your story. But first, let me say hello to Leslie Escobar, who's so excited to hear that you are in the hot seat today, and our own CMO, Tina Parker, who said the hottest thing on ice. Love it. Margaret is here. Hello, everyone. Oh, and there is my cousin, Linda Snowgrowth from North Salem. Hey, Linda. Margaret is in New York City. Devon, so good. Tell us your story. Tell us your story of how you made it from Jamaica to the top of that snowy, icy hill in the middle of the winter. Tell us your story.
Well, we could be here for a while. So let me find a short version.
version.
I grew up at 15 years old, I started dreaming about competing in the Olympic Games because that's the year I started training for track seriously. And ABC Wild World of Sports had a series called Road to Moscow. And in it, they highlighted athletes from around the world, different nations and ethnicities and sporting disciplines, telling their stories about their sporting lives as well as their lives outside of sports. Now, when we think of Olympic athletes, we tend to think of these superhuman beings. But what I saw in that series were these very average and ordinary people. But you know what? They had these extraordinary dreams and an equally extraordinary desire to make those dreams happen. And it kind of dawned on me then that, well, except for there's a talent thing, anyone could become an Olympian, if you dare to dream that big and back it up with some work. And so I started dreaming about competing in the Olympics, not in bobsledding, not as the next 100-meter champion, but as a middle distance runner.
So hold on there, Devon. So you're a dreamer. Get that. And you are from Jamaica, who is known for their track stars.
Right.
Specifically, their sprinters. But you are also a middle distance runner.
I was a middle distance runner, yeah.
And we need to understand, we'll need to unpack that a little bit, because bobsled pushing, I would think they need the sprinters, not the middle distance runners.
That's true. Well, you know, the thing is, I was impatient to win. I really wanted to win. And, you know, speed is a very relative thing. So if you live in Jamaica and you are a sprinter, you know, I might be fast somewhere else, but not necessarily in Jamaica. And I hated.
Depends on your pond, right?
Pardon me?
It depends on which pond you're in.
Yeah, you know, so finishing third wasn't doing it for me. And so I went and I ran an 800-meter race and I won. I'm like, okay, so this is my race. So I turned up for the track team the following year, and the coach says, you know, what are you running? I said 800, and he goes, okay, you'll run 1500 as well. Never heard of it before, but I'm like, sure, but we'll run 1500. So if you fast forward, you know, I'm 21 years old, and I'm a newly commissioned Army officer, which was my big dream. Yeah, you know, the thing that drove me was to become an Army officer. It wasn't a sports thing. Sports was bonus. But I'm having this really intense conversation with myself. I'm like, so what are you going to do with the rest of your life, man? You're 21 years old. You've achieved the big dream. Is this it? I'm like, oh, yeah, the Olympics.
You remembered.
Yeah, which were coming up in Seoul, Korea. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So I started training, hoping that I'd get fit enough to qualify for those Olympics.
In track,
800, 1500, right? So run about that same time, two Americans who lived in Jamaica. If you've seen the movie Cool Runnings, you remember Sanka racing this cart down a winding mountain road. They saw that pushcart derby, we call it. And to them, it's kind of like bobsledding, two crazy guys going down the side of a mountain in a cart, except for the ice. Then they discovered that a big part of the bobsled race is the start. They need the sprinters. And so they went to the guys on a summer team to try and get them to do it, and they weren't interested. So they came to the Army looking for athletes. Long story short, my colonel suggested that I tried out for the team.
Is that like voluntold?
I was voluntold, yeah. I mean, it's not like I had a choice. His exact words actually were, tell Colonel Barnes that you and Lieutenant Wilkie will be going to the bobsled team trials. And actually, I was relieved when I heard that, because usually when I was a second lieutenant, and when the colonel calls you, it's because you're in trouble. And I'm like, oh, all I have to do is go to the bobsled team. I'm not in trouble. All right, cool, I'm good. But, you know, a switch kind of flipped in me in that moment, right? It was because I'm not wired to go to the team trials just to make up numbers. Now it became, how in the world am I going to make that team? I don't know. I just know I had to make it. And so I went to the team trials and tried my darnest. I worked really, really hard. And I think they liked my smile and they selected me.
Yes, you definitely got it because of your smile. Yeah. Devon, when you were at the trials, is that the first time that you saw the other competitors?
Yes. So
at the trials,
at the team trials was I didn't know anybody. No, that's not true. There were a couple of guys from my unit and from other units in the Army that I knew. But then there were others, because Dudley Sosa and Michael White, who were Army guys, I did not know them before. So most of the people I didn't know. You know, and some of them I'm like, they were huge Army track stars, and I'm like, I just came. I'm like, how am I going to beat these guys? But you know, I figured it out.
One of the things that you told me during our interview is that you were Army fit. You weren't sports fit. Why don't you tell everyone what the difference is?
Yeah. So again, in my head, you know, if you're going to go to the Olympics, man, you have to be at the peak of fitness. And I hadn't done any sports training for almost 2 years, but I was what I described as Army fit. I could walk 100 miles with 50 pounds on my back and a rifle in my hand. Easy. You know, that I could do. So I was really concerned about, you know, how I was going to make this team, and especially being a middle distance runner, doing all these sprinting events, because that's what it was, testing speed and explosive power. And I knew there wasn't enough time to train to get up to speed. So I went down to the running track on the army base. I'm like, okay, let me run 30 meters and see what it feels like. And I did that. And I ran 60 meters and 100 meters. And I saw what it felt like. I didn't need to run 300. I knew what those felt like. I'm like, all right. So it became a mental game. Like I knew what it felt like just running on my own. I knew when I went to the team trials, well, it's going to be 150% effort. And we'll just see where it lands me. And
so for anyone who's ever run track before, if you're used to running one sort of race, to suddenly run something which is a fraction of that, those things just aren't done. It's a completely different mindset and skill set. So the fact that you did it was pretty incredible. So Devon, you got to these trials. You still haven't seen ice or a bobsled yet.
That's true.
Okay.
Small matters.
And then what happened?
So, I team trials, I woke up the Saturday morning after sleeping all night, and my friends are calling me the Olympian. And that's when I heard that they announced on the sports news that I was on the team. That's how I got. And then about 2 weeks later, I got an airline ticket. And when I turned up at the airport, I saw Dudley and Michael, who were Army guys, and Samuel Clayton, who was a civilian, who I recognized from the team trials. So we flew up to New York, drove up
Hold up, Devon.
Mm-hmm.
The first time you met the three other people that you were going to be squished into this bobsled with was at the airport. That was the first time.
Officially, yeah. We had seen each other at the team trials, but yeah. So now that we know we're on the team, well, you turn up at the airport and you kind of looking to see who else is turning up, and then you see these three other guys. Like, okay, you made it. Oh, you made it. Oh, you made it. Okay, cool. This is us.
All right, now we have 4 Jamaicans flying where?
To JFK.
And
then we drove up to Lake Placid, New York.
Okay. You had to get a big winter coat.
No, it was September, so it was still, well, by Jamaican standards, that was pretty cold, actually.
So September, and the Olympics were in January.
In February, yeah.
So you had 4 or 5 months to get your team together. And you still haven't seen a bobsled or ice.
No. So we saw a bobsled in Lake Placid that September. So we drive up there and the coach goes, "Gentlemen, this is a bobsled." I'm like, oh. And I'm looking at it. So I'm like, this thing is really small. It's tight. How the hell are we going to fit in there, right? And then we went to the bobsled track. And the thing I remember about that is looking at the corners where it meets the straightaway and how narrow that was, and imagining how fast we were probably going. I'm like, how are we going to fit through that? And then my next thought was, well, others have done it, so we're going to have to figure it out ourselves. So that was the first time we saw a bobsled on a bobsled track. And then the first time we went on an actual bobsled track was in Calgary in October of '87.
So the first time you saw the track was now 3.5 months before the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first time you went down.
First time I went down, yeah, it was October.
3.5 months before the Olympics. Oh my! Anyone else think this is like a wild story? But it's true.
That's true, though. I mean, I talk about it all the time. That if they had told the story as it really unfolded in the movie, people would not believe it. I mean, if we can jump forward a little bit on this vein, the form. I think it dawned on me today that our 4-man race was the first time in history of the Olympics, I believe, that anybody ever competed in an Olympic event, and that event was the first time they raced or competed in that event. So we had never done 4-man bobsled until the Olympics.
Wow.
Devon, were you terrified? Like, how did you get over your fear? Like suddenly you come and you see this track and it looks really scary with this curve and you're going really fast. Like, weren't you like scared out of your mind?
Well, to this day, as far as I can remember, I'm the only guy on the team who said he was scared, and the others have to be lying. I know that. But my first one, I was scared to death. And I remember saying, you know what? If I die, I die, but I'm going. And that just got me to fully commit. And I went and we did 3 runs that first evening from the halfway point. And I remember on that third one, I was still scared to death, but I was hooked. I remember screaming through that the cries of that thing, like going, yee-haw! Like, and Sammy was my driver. I'm like, go Sammy, go Sammy, go Sammy. I was having a ball, still scared to death. It's, I'm a strange being, as you can tell.
You roll with it. All right. So now we are 3 months before. It's the first time you see a track and you're scared of heights and speed. Yeah. But somehow you squish yourself into this bobsled with these guys that you just started training with and met a month ago.
Yeah.
And then you make it to the Olympics. And it shocks everyone. Did it shock you?
No, I mean, the idea that we weren't never going to make it just never crossed our minds. We just got up every day and we trained and focused on getting to the Olympic Games. It wasn't a surprise to us, surprised others, but not us.
Wow. Well, where did that confidence come from? I'm curious. It's something you'd never done before that could kill you, knowing the gravity of the Olympics. Where did that deep sense of self and accomplishment come from?
I think part of it is the Army. So in our where we do basic training in Jamaica, the training depot called Newcastle, one of the most beautiful views in all of Jamaica, and one of the worst experiences you can ever have, right? As a recruit in basic training, and the motto is there: no obstacles too great, no task too difficult. So you get up every day embracing that mantra, and then I speak all the time about when I did my basic officer training at Sandhurst. We had long periods of intense physical activity with very little rest, and that's what the early days of bobsledding was like. And I remember going, "Oh, I've seen this movie before at Sandhurst," so I just kind of went into that mode, long. Cold, England is cold and miserable. This was a little bit more enjoyable, but still, challenging.
Wow. Well, hello, LinkedIn user from Queen City, Charlotte. And now Leslie Escobar has questions that we're all wondering about the parallels between the movie Cool Runnings and what actually happened. How accurate is it? And the question that I really want to know is, were the other athletes really as nasty to the Jamaican bobsledders as it appeared in the movie? Because I would think that's very un-Olympian.
Yeah, very popular question. So I often say that in the credits at their scroll, it says based on the true story of the Jamaican bobsled team or something like that. 2 words are missing, very loosely, very loosely based on the true story. So yeah, there was a bobsled team from Jamaica. We had problem finding funding. We went to the Olympics and we crashed. Everything else, they either stretched the truth to make it funny or they just made up stuff. So the stuff with the East Germans, berating and belittling us. Nobody does that to Jamaicans. We're cool, we're fun. And then the flip side of that is that nobody does that to Jamaica because we take no crap from nobody. So that's not going to happen. But you're right, though. Athletes typically don't treat each other that way. There may be 2 athletes with a personal beef or 2 teams, but generally speaking, that doesn't happen. And I often tell a story of being in the warm house. So imagine we're at the Olympic Games.
What is the warm house?
The warm house is that place where you hang out before you go down the track. You didn't think we sat outside, did you?
I don't know. Now I'm picturing you guys with a hot cocoa.
So there's this building that we call the warm house. That's kind of where you hang out and you get ready. And we are, learning and just experiencing this thing on so many different levels, right? So imagine, I don't know, you went to the NBA finals as a basketball player, and that's the first time you're seeing LeBron James and Kevin Durant and all those guys. That was our experience at the Olympic Games. This was the first time we're seeing all the major players, and you're like, okay. And then that was our first major race.
But Devon, did you even know who the other competitors were? Did you know who were the lead people, or you're like, oh, you're from Canada?
You heard the names, so now you're finally putting, faces to the names.
And where did you get your bobsled from?
So the 2-man sled that we used, because we did both events, we had rented from the Americans prior. And the 4-man we got during the Olympics from the Canadians. We rented it from them.
During the Olympics. So hold on. You were now racing with a team you just met 4 months ago in a sled that you just got a few days ago.
Yes. And that's why part of the reason why we crashed. It was disastrous. It's like, what were you thinking? But I'm glad we did it.
And that was the first time. Now you were in the Olympics twice more.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And how was that experience different?
Well, I became a driver. So when I was joining the team, the brakemen had to score more than the drivers. And not knowing anything about the sport, I thought that was an important role. So I wanted to be a brakeman. And then I got in and I realized the driver was the dude. And I'm like, can I be a driver? But I was really too scared that first year to drive, but I knew I wanted to drive. So after 88, I became a driver. And actually became Jamaica's #1 driver leading into Albertville. Amazing. It's a lot more work, but so much more fun. I love that responsibility I love shouldering that responsibility and just and going with it. Absolutely loved it.
Spoken like an officer. What a story. What a story. So you did 3 Olympics and then you decided that was it?
Yeah, it kind of came down to that. After my second Olympics, I was actually trying to move on from bobsledding. I was trying to move on to the real world, and I couldn't shake it. And I think it's in part because, and I often say, I may be delusional, but I think I have the ability to win a medal. And I didn't feel like we had an opportunity to give it our all in those 2 previous Olympics. And so I decided to go pursue my 3rd Olympic Games, which was incredibly difficult on so many different levels. But I got there, and now I kind of felt like I had a platform on which to build for my 4th Olympics in Salt Lake City. But I did not want to go to the Olympics just to be a 4-time Olympian. I wanted the opportunity to train the way I thought a potential medal contender would train and then see where the chips fall. But there was just so much swirling, so much politics that was going on. And I felt I could get to the Olympics, but I'm going to use so much energy fighting all of this stuff over here that it would totally detract from the way I want to prepare. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do this thing they call motivational speaking.
And here you are.
Yeah, here we are. I'm at the cool kids table now.
At the cool kids table with the Mentor Project.
Yeah.
Debbie. Debbie had a question for Devon.
I do. Have you ever been bobsledding since the Olympics?
No, the last time, kind of. The last time I was on ice was in 1998 in Park City. They were preparing for the 2002 Olympics, and I helped put some kids on ice there. But bobsledding is not a recreational sport. It's not like skiing. You definitely need someone else to go with you. You're supposed to have a license. And then, the closest track is 5 hours away. So, I don't see myself doing a 10-hour round trip for 2 or 3 minutes on the ice. That just doesn't make sense. So
there's no pickup bobsledding.
Unfortunately, no, there's no pickup bobsledding, man. There's no.
I talked about last week. All the retired players doing a pickup game
of the bobsled.
Did you guys ever mix and match from other teams just to do it for fun? Like go in anybody else's bobsled, like mix it up?
No. You know how dangerous that thing is? The last thing you want to do is go with some other driver and get hurt.
I don't know, Debbie. I'm seeing a Mentor Project road trip.
I know, right?
Bobsled track, and Devon is going to take us. And what is it that you were wearing? That unitard?
The speed suit, yeah, my unitard, yeah.
Speed suit.
Speed suit, my racing uniform.
Racing uniform. We give him a hard time here at the Mentor Project. We call it a leotard, a unitard. He's like, no, it's a speed suit.
I have another question for you, Devon.
Sure.
So here in the U.S., there was just such amazing fanfare the first year that you were in the Olympics. What was it like in Jamaica at home? Like when you went back there, was everyone freaking out, or did anybody even watch because it was the Winter Olympics?
People were aware. It was difficult, although we didn't have social media then. It was difficult for them not to be. We were really worried about going home because we had crashed, and we felt we had totally embarrassed the nation and let down the country. And Jamaicans don't like losing too much. And so we thought people were going to ridicule us, but they were so kind. They were so graceful. They were making excuses for us that we didn't even make for ourselves, man. Like, oh, you guys did so well. We're from a tropical island. And we didn't see or use the excuse that we're from Jamaica as a reason not to do well. We figured we should be able to do well despite. So if they were saying, like, okay, if you feel that way, thank you, and then the government made stamps with our faces on it. So it was kind of cool to have.
Oh, Janice collects stamps. She needs that.
Janice, I am awful. I lost all the original ones I got, right? And then, I don't know, 20 years ago or so, a friend of mine bought some and gave to me, and it might be on my bookshelf. I don't know. It's
next to the medals, right?
It's somewhere there. Yeah, it's crazy.
Janice, you're muted. We'd love to hear. What were you going to say?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize. Okay, we have to see the stamps. That is so cool, and we have to see the medals because that is just very cool.
Well, I can show you the medals.
Come on, and the stamps. I don't know anybody who has a stamp.
I don't know where the stamps are. I honestly don't know.
In the U.S., you can't have a stamp until you're dead, so it's really very impressive.
So this is the first medal Jamaica ever won in bobsledding.
Sam, can you make them bigger? Sam, can you spotlight Devon so we can see that? There we go.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. First medal ever won. It says Caribbean Cup, 3rd place. I can't believe I finished 3rd in this race. This is the first time I actually believed that the sled played an important role, because these guys never ever beat me, and they beat me on this time. I'm upset still.
Who's they?
It was Dudley Stokes from Jamaica won, and Mexican dude came 2nd, and I finished 3rd.
So wait a minute. Now all these other countries had bobsledders?
Yeah. So Dudley was on the Jamaican team, so he was.
So you started a movement.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they never beat me since, So yes, the sled really plays an important role.
Huh. All right. What else you got for us? All right, Sam, give him a spotlight. Wait, there we go. What is that?
Calgary 88 participation medal. Unfortunately, I actually didn't win a medal on the track. So this is Calgary 88. This is Albertville 92.
They're big. Are they heavy?
Not that heavy. It's okay. And then this is Nagano 98.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is
and
cool.
That's a participation one?
Yeah, everybody gets one.
Very nice. Yeah,
Yes.
everybody who goes to the Olympics gets one. Not
Participation
everybody.
medal. It's kind of like, playing Little League. Everybody gets a participation medal.
It's a small detail. You actually have to go to the Olympics to get it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Devon, what most of us mortals we watch the Olympics, and we see all of you athletes there. What's the biggest misconception of the Olympics and participating in the Olympics? What did you learn while we were there that everyone else doesn't realize or doesn't know about the Olympic experience?
It's a really good question. Just how alike we all are, and I think I say this all the time. 88, for example, in particular, was where that was highlighted to me. I was a newly minted army officer who was trained to believe that everyone behind the Iron Curtain was evil. And here I am, because the world was still at the height of the Cold War. And here I am, I'm in the game arcades, and I'm killing the Pac-Man. So, I'm dating myself there now. And, to my left is a guy from Poland, and off to my right, a guy from East Germany. And you realize, man, the only difference between us is ideology. We are, we suffer from the same human frailties and foibles, and share, similar aspirations there to compete and be our best for our respective countries. And so just being there for me, that 16 days of utopia is what I call it, because you're shut off from the rest of the world. There's no social media, and you just got a chance to enjoy your fellow human being. And that's amazing.
That's beautiful.
What's it like when you finish your races and you're done and you're still at the Olympics? What does that feel like?
For a bobsledder, it sucks. You know why? It's horrible. So the Olympics are roughly 2 weeks. And so the first week, you train for 2-man bobsled. The schedule has changed now since then, but when I was racing, you train for 2-man bobsled, you race on the weekend. Then the second week, you train for 4-man bobsled, you race on the weekend, and then the closing ceremony is that evening.
Oh, so you don't have a break.
Wow.
Whereas you have teams, their event actually start before the opening ceremony. They're done a day or two after the opening ceremony, and they have 2 weeks of partying, So, it's rough being a bobsled at the Olympics. That's all I can say. But then there's still a sense of relief, though, that you don't have that pressure, and you can kind of relax a little bit and just kind of chit chat. And then one of the best parts of the Olympics for me is when the flame is lit, because it just signifies that the symbol of unity, right? And the worst part, and I can still hear it in my head, is when the flame is extinguished. You hear that awful swoosh, and utopia is over, But then
no more free laundry.
No, unfortunately. But then it becomes a kind of free for all, and everybody runs into center field, and it's a big party, and so the sadness lasts for a little bit, and okay, we're going to meet in 4 years again, kind of thing.
Nice, nice.
I'm a believer that everything you do in life helps you with everything else that you're going to do in life.
Mm-hmm.
How your experiences, both preparing for and experiencing it, helped you in the work you currently do and personally in your life?
Well, I always say that it's virtually impossible to have taken on something that is so challenging and so out of the box without it impacting your life, impacting the way you think and the way you move around in the world. And I often say that the biggest lesson I learned wasn't the fact that I could learn to bobsled in a short period of time, but that I could literally accomplish anything I truly set my mind to, within reason. And so, you add that to this army thing of no task too difficult, no obstacles too great, and you get this.
Well, Devon, one of the statements that comes up repeatedly in the success factors that the high achievers fear not trying more than they fear failing. Yeah. And I'm hearing that come through in your story over and over and over again, especially when it's these guys who just met in September at the airport. They saw a bobsled for the first time in October. They rented one in January, February, and then they raced it, only having sat a few hours in it total. If that's not the whole meaning of fear not trying more than you fear failing, I don't know what is. So kudos to you. Good job.
Yeah, I think it's, how can you know if you don't try? It's, I often say, life is a rather painful experience, right? We either have to deal with the pain of change or the pain of regret, but as you grapple with which of these to choose, recognize that the pain of change is temporary, but the pain of regret is eternal. You don't want to live with that, oh man, I wish I could. I wonder what would have happened if I don't have to wonder. I tried.
But see, Devon, that's so important because so many people fear failing and so many people actually fear success. Yeah. And you're saying it's not a big deal to fear failing because that'll be temporary if you actually fail.
Indeed. Yeah, it doesn't feel good to fail, right? You look at the crash in Calgary, that's failure. And it's not just any old failure, it's failure in front of the entire world. But what does that say? Failure isn't fatal. I'm still here telling the tale.
And you were back 4 years later.
because that failure made us so much more resolute. We're so much more determined to do this thing, right? And there was a lesson to learn from it. And that's the thing about failure in our lives. It gives you a really cool story to tell. So don't fear failure.
Devon, I've been reading a lot about this idea, and I can't really get it out of my mind. It's called post-traumatic growth. And Debbie, maybe you have some insights on this, but it's really about when something really bad happens to you, you can, some people just fold up, right? But other people use that trauma to ignite them.
Yeah, it
sounds like that's what happened.
Yeah, I've never heard that term before. If I have, I've forgotten, but it actually makes sense, right? If you're not afraid to fail, and you accept that, the results, I didn't get it, and it sucks right now, but there are lessons to learn, then you're going to go.
Apollo Anton Ono, who's the most decorated Winter Olympian, he's also in the book, and he's going to be a guest on the show in March. And if you look at his career, it was highs and lows. And he said when he hit that low, he can taste that bitterness, and he never wanted to taste that bitterness again. And that's what fueled him to work that much harder and succeed, just so that he never has to feel that way again.
Yeah.
Sounds like that's what happened to you and your teammates.
And again, it's not fun tasting that bitterness, but we all have to taste the bitterness because it is part of the success journey. So I tell people to just, embrace it, accept it. And by acceptance, I don't mean you resign yourself to this fate that you're a failure and things will not work out. It's accepting that this is the situation you're in, because I think that empowers you to move.
Yeah.
One thing Devon, you're exceptional for making the Olympics the first time, but you're a multi-Olympian. Like, you've been there 3 times. And so I've heard that, it's a 4-year journey each time. Like, you have to dedicate yourself for 4 years. And then you have to kind of stick with it. Like, how was it different the second time around and then the third time around? And what are some of the different qualities that you think are involved? Because there's 1-time Olympians, but then there's a lot fewer 2-time, and there's even a lot fewer 3-time Olympians.
Yeah. So, for my second Olympics, obviously I switched roles on the team. I became a driver. I had this rather interesting life. I would take my bobsled uniform off, not my unitard, but my racing suit.
The speed suit.
and I would put my army uniform on and went back to work, right? And
oh, wow.
I had to find time in between duties to train while I was in Jamaica. And then I would get the time off to come overseas to do the actual bobsledding. So although I was focused and committed to it, I didn't get a chance to train the way other teams would train, like full-time, year-round. So in a way, I was a part-time bobsledder, but really focusing on the driving. And then after the 92 Olympics, the next time was 98. So I had this long span. And I remember I would drive the track in Calgary almost every day in my mind. And I was away from the sport for 4 years. And so as I was going back, I was debating, should I start at the halfway point or should I go to the top? And I got back, I'm like, I'm going to the top. And it was like I'd never left because I was driving that track practically every day. And I just went right back into it because I was doing all this mental work during this time.
Wow. Now, Deborah, we're going to go to you for the last question. But before we do that, I asked at the top of the hour, who recognizes which one is Devon in that picture behind Bruce? And Margaret got it right. Devon, tell him which one.
Yeah, I'm that one over Bruce's right shoulder with a pad on his elbow. Yep.
Oh, the handsome one. The handsome one.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with the helmet on.
Margaret, yeah, you got it right. And that's your first Olympics.
That's my first Olympics. Yeah, pushing from the right side, the number 2 guy in the sled.
Love it. Debbie, final question of the night before we wrap up.
So Devon, has anything ever matched the magic of the Olympics? The feeling that you've had, the intensity of it. Have you ever had that since your last Olympics?
It's hard to equate, you know, but if you're ranking accomplishments, if you could, you know, call my kids accomplishments. The thing I love being called the most is daddy, you know. So it's kind of cool being an Olympian, but I love being daddy the most.
And you have 5 kids, so that's pretty cool.
Yes, exactly.
You're
So I've been called daddy a lot.
You're creating your own bobsled team, and then you even have a backup.
I have to have a backup.
A coach. One's the coach, and then you can have Devon, after you've been with us on the High Achieving panel for so long, it is an honor that during the Winter Olympics, you can give us the behind-the-scenes scoop of what it's like. We've all seen the movie Cool Runnings. We've all loved it. But really getting to hear from you what it was like. And, you know, you and I got to talk about it for the book, for the success factor. But hearing it again, boy, I can hear it over and over and over again. Thank you so much, Devon. Devon, why don't you take us out with that quote once again? Favorite quote from the book.
Feel the rhythm, feel the rhyme, get on up. It's a success factor time.
You're awesome, Devon. Guys, thank you very, very much. We will see you all next week. If you guys are listening on the podcast, which comes out about a week after the live show, would you please leave us a rating and review? We read each and every one of them, and trust me, we take them to heart. We've been tightening up the show from hearing all of the comments and feedback, and we want to bring you such great guests like we've been having and like Devon tonight. So please let us know. Hopefully we have earned the 5-star review, and we will be live again next week. We've got incredible guests. See you next week. Bye, everyone.